Presiding Officer, this is what we've learned after 3 weeks of the COVID inquiry in Scotland. The most senior ministers and officials knowingly deleted evidence to how they operated during the pandemic. They subverted the COVID inquiry and broke freedom of information laws. They plotted how to maximise their own political advantage while thousands of Scots fought for their lives. It is a betrayal of the trust the people of Scotland put into this SNP government. Nicola Sturgeon didn't tell the truth to the public, and Humza Yousaf seems to have misled this Parliament in an attempt to defend her. And now the SNP Deputy Leader is supporting attacks on the inquiry itself. Why is protecting the SNP more important to Humza Yousaf than getting to the truth?
First Minister.
It's simply a complete and utter mischaracterisation of what we have heard. At every occasion that I have had exchanges on this issue, I've first of all once again acknowledged the impact of the decisions that we made around informal communications on the Scottish COVID bereaved. I do that again, and I apologise once again, unreservedly, as I did in the inquiry and to them directly, to those who are representing the Scottish COVID bereaved, for our mishandling in relation to the informal communications. We could have and should have done better. But I go back to the point that I just made to Douglas Ross, and I repeat it again to Anas Sarwar. Yes, we should have done better on retention policy of informal communications. But in the course of this pandemic, when it came to the important decisions that helped to save lives, I believe we took, first of all, the decisions for the right reason, and I think we can evidence that very clearly, that the harms and protecting people from harms and the people of Scotland from harm was the #1 overriding priority. But through the actions that we took, when it came to one measure, and I conclude it is only and accept it's only one measure, the age standardised mortality rates per 100,000 across the 4 UK nations, Scotland had 124.9 per 100,000. That was different to England, 145 per 100,000, Wales 144 per 100,000, the UK average 143 per 100,000. That is not to diminish the number of lives that continue to be lost to COVID to this very day. And the decisions that we took, of course, also ensured that when it came to the booster vaccination, it was one of the fastest booster vaccination programmes in the world at one point, certainly the fastest in the UK by quite some distance too. So yes, we could have and should have done better. I accept fully on message retention. I, of course, handed over the messages that I had in question about them for almost 3 hours. But on the big calls that help to save lives, I believe we can evidence, and we've seen the evidence, that not only did we do it for the right reason, but our interventions help to save lives here in Scotland.
Anas Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, ministers and officials knowingly deleted evidence for the COVID inquiry, and the answer to this betrayal of the Scottish people, a review into how the Scottish Government records information. In 2020, when we had the salmon inquiry and there were accusations of a cover-up, what did they do? Promise a review. In 2022, when we had investigations into the ferry scandal and there were accusations of a cover-up, what did they do? Promise a review. And now we have the industrial-scale deletion of evidence for the COVID inquiry. And what's this First Minister's answer? A review. They simply don't get it. Pamela Thomas, who lost her brother during the pandemic, said this yesterday. I don't think they're capable of actually telling the truth or being transparent. Pamela's right, isn't she?
First Minister.
I want to, of course, express my condolence to every single member of the country who lost a loved one through COVID. Pamela, of course, included. And I make this point again to Anas Sarwar, that all of us, including, of course, members of this government, also lost loved ones to COVID. And ministerial colleagues who have relatives who continue to suffer the long-term effects of COVID. I have colleagues who had to, of course, restrict the numbers who could attend the funeral of a loved one. Many of us, myself included, had children who were impacted because of the closure of schools because of COVID. And I say that not because I'm trying to garner any sympathy from Anas Sarwar or anybody else. I say that because we were all in this together. We were not detached somehow from the impacts or the effects of the pandemic. And that's why every decision we made was made with one overarching priority in mind: how to protect as many people as we could from the harm of COVID. Do I think we got every decision right? No, I don't. I don't think any government in the world, any government leader in the world, could put their hand in their heart and say they got every single decision right. What I can say is we did it for the right reasons. And on the big decisions that were crucial to saving lives, I believe on many of them we got them right. Some, of course, will not have got right. And I promise those who have been bereaved by COVID, the families of those who have been bereaved by COVID, that not only will we continue to cooperate with both inquiries, but we promise to learn the lessons of those inquiries too.
Anas Sarwar.
The COVID-bereaved families don't believe the First Minister when he gives those reassurances. The COVID inquiry is about learning the lessons so this can never happen again. But they have been obstructed by this government, with evidence supplied late or not at all. The decisions the inquiry is investigating still weigh on the people across this country. Why were COVID-positive patients sent into care homes? Why was inadequate PPE being supplied to care workers and leaving people exposed? What impact did lockdowns have on our young people who missed out on years of education? 3 years ago, in an election during the pandemic, many people in Scotland voted for his party because they thought Nicola Sturgeon did the best she could. They trusted her when she said this Parliament would be about COVID recovery. Now those same people have had their trust broken by this government and they're appalled at the cover-up. First Minister, isn't it true? It's not just the messages that have disappeared. So has the trust in this SNP government.
First Minister.
I tend to leave the verdict of trust to the people of Scotland. Anas Sarwar is right. One of the major factors of why the SNP is back into power is because of our handling over the course of the pandemic. And that wasn't judged. Anas Sarwar shouting, wow, I'm saying to Anas that he's absolutely correct and one of the reasons why we're standing here. What I don't think was an issue during the 2021 elections was our retention policy, our record management policy. It was whether or not we got the calls right in relation to the vaccination programme. It's whether, of course, we did the right thing in terms of introducing non-pharmaceutical interventions. Anas Sarwar talks about, in his words, an industrial scale deletion. We handed over 28,000 WhatsApp messages and 19,000 documents. Anas Sarwar is right to ask questions about care homes, around PPE, about lockdown and its impacts. These are exactly the questions the inquiry is examining. And this suggestion from Anas Sarwar that somehow we're not being transparent, can I remind Anas Sarwar that not only are we cooperating with a UK inquiry, we're the only nation in the UK to specifically establish an inquiry in our country. And we'll also be cooperating with that Scottish inquiry too. Nicola Sturgeon, over 250 media briefings. Ministers in this government attended this Parliament, not on dozens of occasions, but hundreds of occasions, explaining the reason why we took decisions. And, Presiding Officer, I go back to the very central point here. We didn't get everything right, and certainly not in relation to retention of messages. What we did get right, and what we did do, is the intention behind our decisions was to protect people from harm. And what we did, according to the World Health Organisation, through the interventions we took, helped to save over 23,000 people's lives. Those are 23,000 people that would not be here if it was not for vaccinations, if it was not for the non-pharmaceutical interventions and the decisions that this government took. And I make no apologies for that.